Welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm so glad you can join us today. I'm your host, Janet Crescent, and we have lots to get to today. We're going to start by talking about lunch. What a great idea. I like that idea. And joining me is Andrea Erickson. She's a registered dietitian at Hy-Vee, the Westside one on Whitney Way. That's my Hy-Vee, by the way.
Good.
Welcome to Talk of the Town.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. So lunch. You know, a lot of folks know that it's healthier, it's cheaper, and it even saves time to pack a lunch, and yet majority of us don't. So what's the first thing that we should be thinking about when we do pack a lunch, if we can make that step?
Yeah. So if someone really wants to get to that habit where they start packing a lunch, that's the first thing, is try to implement it into your routine or into your habit. And even start with 1 or 2 days a week, versus thinking you have to do every single day. Maybe you pack for a couple days, take a day off, pack for a couple other days.
That's a good way to get going. Let's talk about a balanced lunch. Now, this is looking really good to me, and it looks very balanced too.
Yes. So to kind of simplify it, what I usually encourage people to do is think of the 5 food groups. They've been pretty much the same over the last several years: fruits, vegetables, protein, grain, and dairy, right? And try to get at least 3 of those food groups in a lunch. If you can get all 5, that's great. I happen to have all 5 here. So if you can kind of think of just combining different food groups to make a lunch, sometimes that's a little less daunting. And then try to find a time of day that works for you, where about the same time every day you're going to actually spend time to pack your lunch. So it might be after supper when you're putting things together, where here, like I have here, I had some leftover pasta on some greens with some cut up veggies, some chicken left over from off the grill. You can kind of put it in the container as you're putting away your supper, and then you kind of do 2 things at the same time.
You've got to put away the leftovers anyway.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
I think when we hear pack a lunch, we think sandwich and chips, and this looks so much better. Of course, it's always better when somebody else makes it for you.
Yeah.
But that looks so fantastic. So help us get beyond the sandwich and chips idea.
Yeah. I think if we think of those different food groups and kind of take ourselves outside of that box a little bit, you maybe put a hard-boiled egg in there that you would think maybe normally you would have it for breakfast, but you add it for your lunch. Adding some, there's a lot of options out there that have individual lunch size different kinds of cheese, hummus, guacamole, salsas. So if you don't want to get too much into the little containers and washing everything, you can get some of the disposable ones and then add them to the rest of your food, so that kind of a little time saver also.
I feel like those little containers of hummus and carrots, and I feel like they've come a long way.
Yes, they have. There's a lot of variety out there, and sometimes people can start with that, and then they get into the groove of it, and then they might start making their own.
Yeah. Let's go back to leftovers a little bit. How do you make those a little more interesting?
Yeah, so it's interesting because leftovers, when we eat out at a restaurant, it's good to kind of keep in our head that we really only need about half, sometimes a third, of what's served to us. So one way you can kind of look at that and think that you just got a free lunch, for the next day, right? You could bring it to your next day, or even 2 days, right? And so with that, you could add maybe a fruit salad to it. If you have leftover pasta, you could add some greens to it and even eat it cold or at room temperature the next day. Some meals you could even add a frozen vegetable, and so when you're heating it up the next day, that cooks at the same time. So you can kind of repurpose leftovers. If you had a leftover salad, you could turn it into a wrap the next day, add some chicken, and then wrap it up in a tortilla. So different things like that.
I think you should just come over and do it, because you sound like you've got it all figured out. That sounds so good. You mentioned the best time to pack a lunch, and you suggested maybe after dinner when you're putting things away. What else? What other ideas do you have?
Yeah, so really it's going to be the time that you're going to kind of fit it into your routine. Some people, maybe when they're drinking their coffee in the morning, that's a good time for them to they're kind of waking up and they can kind of get their containers out and put their foods together. After a meal is a great time, just because you're kind of doing 2 things at once. Some people might even pick 2 days a week and just decide, Sunday afternoons and Wednesday evenings, I'm going to pack for the next 2 or 3 days, and then they have it all laid out in the refrigerator, and they just need to grab it in the morning.
We just have a few seconds left. What if someone
Sure.
feels like they don't have time?
Yeah, I would say just start with one day.
Just one day.
Start with one day, give it a try, and then try to start fitting it into your routine.
Okay. Well, Andrea, we're going to have your phone number on the screen. You can call her. You'll reach her office at Hy-Vee, and maybe you can help people find some of
Yes.
those little containers with the prepackaged things, or maybe with some dietary questions as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome.
Andrea's the registered dietitian over at Hy-Vee on Whitney Way. And we're Talk of the Town. We'll be right back.